Well, we'll get underway. Welcome everyone to Sales Q&A number 3. Obviously, really been interesting people's response and jumping on and sort of questions. What's really interesting is I spoke to a number of people sort of over the last month in New Zealand and they've all been listening to the recordings, which is really cool. So while you don't think you're getting people listening on the day or even tuning in or jumping on, people are taking the recording. We're getting quite a lot of downloads on the recording, the pod. So keep that in mind. So what's it all about? I guess it's all about understanding the true potential. We just felt back in, I guess it was early September, that the extroverts of the world were struggling a little bit, especially the salespeople. So we thought, well, why don't we put something on to help people just focus on their sales issues and somewhere for the weird ones to go. And I'm technically classed as one of the weird ones, and that's sort of my brand. And if you don't like it, I don't really care, so that's okay. That isn't Sally would testify, that isn't a photo of me, although I have done this without a shirt and a helmet on. So it was good fun at the time. So that started it. I hope you're all riding the wave. Again, I use this sort of image as my reference point off my wisdom wall. If we can get through the wave and come up the other side with your business intact and sort of things and opportunities, there are opportunities. There's lots of things going on. I was talking to one of the partners in New Zealand, and an interesting one for you, Peter Lucas. He's never seen so much M&A action in New Zealand that he's seeing in the last couple of months. Lots of merger and acquisition going on. So people that don't see opportunities, and then there are people that see lots of opportunities once you come out of the wave. So there's stuff going to happen. I again sort of reference a couple of key points for me, especially around this diagram. We know the stages that we go through after coming out of a pandemic, a world war, crisis, whatever. Just understand the bottom line there, what stages you are, and understand where you're at as a business. I think it's really important, but be really mindful at the moment where your people are. Your people are at the top line, and they may not be at the same stage you are, and think of your customers on that same blue shaded line. Are your customers at the same stage that you are? If you're opening again and starting to get a bit of energy back, which clearly happened in Melbourne this week, are your customers ready for that? So are customers strung out, or are they still sort of hanging on? So just be mindful. And an app that I've been using, and a lot of people I know have been using, that came out of New Zealand, which is a brilliant app, which is Mentomia. So free app, really clever app. So if you're struggling with sort of any wellness or mental health, have a try at that app. It's free, easy to sort of use. The other point that I've sort of made every time we've met is just understand your due north. I think I've done 3 strategy workshops this week with customers, and we haven't gone big strategy like 5-year, where we're going to go, common goal and vision, all that. Yeah. What we've really worked on is, where are you at now? What's happened to your mountain? The summit's probably still there, but what's the path? And is it blocked at the moment? Can you get through? How do we get through the avalanche that's interrupting us? And every time I do this, and Angela, of a business where we've done this in the last 2 weeks, and it's been really revealing for them to just get their due north right. And it's allowed them to focus on their sort of run into Christmas and into the new year, where they can have a rest. Just the other thing, I think we're too far there. Blind faith is not enough. So I think common goal and vision at the moment, if you can't get that in sales or in your business, you're going to have real problems trying to focus over the next couple of months. At number 2, we got a statement from the wonderful Arix Bazil, which I think we all enjoyed, and that was fall in love with your customers' problems, not your solution. Absolutely. And it was just a golden statement, and we really thank Arix. I think she was going to try and jump on later tonight. She's got a fair bit going on in the US, of course, at the moment with the global company. But what a great statement. And to take that to the next level, I sort of saw a story this week that just blew my mind. You think about it, Hoppy, when, I was back in the printing industry, I'd start a printing business, buy a printing press, get a factory, get a pre-press department, get a lot of Apple Macs and a HAL Chromacon scanner and all that crap, and spend a couple of million. These blokes have spent about 15 grand each, and they've now got a 250 million turnover business. And they just knocked back $500 million in angel investment. They don't need it. Now, all this thing started with was a problem. They saw a problem in buying a bed, in trying to buy a bed. And, Hoppy's going to focus on this tonight. Like, the whole key to sales at the moment for me is around find the biggest customer problems and then try and solve it with them. So if you haven't looked at this story, it's in the Financial Review. It was in the Australian last week, their story, these two young guys. They're ex-ANZ bankers that just went out on their own, tried to buy a bed and couldn't do it. So they said, this is crazy, this process, we're going to do it better. Just a wonderful story, a beautiful brand, I reckon, a great story. Have a look at their website. It's really simple. And they've now got angel investors jumping all over them. So for me, it's all about problem solving at the moment. What's the problems with your customers? Understand those problems and help solve them. And Hoppy's going to sort of look into that tonight with our Q&A. All right, let's get to the important stuff. As you know, this is about wine down. So I've got my wine here, and our wine sponsor I've brought right close. I've gone from New Zealand to the slopes, from the slopes of the Southern Highlands in Blenheim. I've come all the way to the slopes of Mount Buninyong. And when we moved here, we discovered some wonderful neighbours, and we got invited to do picking with Pete and Pauline, who run Bended Knee, and just wonderful. We had a great time. I don't think we've done it since, so we got interrupted by COVID and all that sort of shit, but just a wonderful experience. We met some wonderful people and a passionate person that's sort of got a little wine business running on the side of Mount Buninyong here. So, Pete, welcome. I'll get you to unmute yourself and give us the short version of the Bended Knee story, and I guess what you're experiencing from a sales and marketing point of view, selling a small boutique winery into the world. Welcome.
Thanks for the invitation, Mike. So, as Mike said, we're basically directly opposite. We're a tiny vineyard. We're only 2 hectares, which in the wine industry is not even a blip. We're pretty vertically integrated. We grow it, make it, bottle it, and then market it ourselves, which is a lot to juggle. We're focused on producing really high quality grapes and really high quality wine in a sustainable manner, which does cause us more work at times. We try and put the work in the vineyard. We do lots of work in the vineyard so that the wines actually make themselves. You don't have to fiddle with them too much, which fits with the push in the last few years towards low-fi wines and low-intervention wines. And basically, because we don't have to do much, we don't have to play a lot of tricks in the winery, the wines actually reflect our unique patch of dirt. So that's sort of the backstory. And I'm not sure if I mentioned, we basically focus on Pinot Noir and Chardonnay because that's basically what grows well in our environment. Mike asked me to talk about what I've learnt from this year, which has been fairly challenging. We only got back into sales about this time last year, about October last year. We'd had a couple of years out of the marketplace. So that in itself presented a few challenges. All the relationships that we had, basically a lot of the people weren't there anymore, and even some of the businesses. And a lot of where we were trying to sell wine or had successfully sold wine at that stage was on premise into restaurants, some fairly good hatted restaurants in Melbourne and throughout country Victoria. And we had to basically start from scratch again. And then 2020 came along, just for a little curveball. So some of the things that we sort of picked up fairly quickly, some businesses, if people not in Victoria probably realise that hospitality here got absolutely smashed and shut down for a number of months, and they're only just re-emerging this week. So our focus on top-end restaurants was not a particularly wise choice at that point. So we basically switched our focus to wine bars and retail wine shops. We noticed that a lot of businesses had adapted very quickly. I guess the buzzword for this year was pivot. So restaurants all of a sudden were doing takeaway meals or fully prepared meals for people at home with no time. And so we basically said, well, that's what we have to do, is change what we were doing and do what's going to work for now. So we changed where we were focused, trying to sell wine. We noticed that probably the people who did best were fairly responsive and fairly quick about how they responded. And I am conscious that we were probably a little bit slower than the ideal, but that's partly because we're trying to do everything. So it's just one of those things we had to trade off. Ideally, we would have been a little bit quicker, but anyway. Yeah. A couple of the other things, I noticed that people are fairly forgiving for this year. So that when you're trying to sort of pivot and put in something different, my temptation is to try and do it absolutely perfectly. And I realised that you've got to be there. You don't have to have it absolutely polished.
So a bit of that minimal viable product, Peter. You sort of got to get there and not have it perfect.
Yeah, and people accepted that it's not ideal, but you're still trying to fulfill, or you're trying to solve one of their problems using your words from before.
Yep, totally agree.
We've already talked about, basically, we've varied our channel to wine bars, retail wine shops. It also, we'd been kicking around the idea of, we already had a website online, but we didn't have a shop or sales attached to it. Yeah. So it basically focused our attention on, this is probably one of the only ways we've got to sell. So it did get us moving, trying to get that put together, plus using more social media and things like MailChimp and stuff like that. So that's our year in a nutshell.
Excellent. Well done, and I can test, and it's a beautiful drop, and I've got a prize here. We got a prize. It got delivered by the Peter Roach Courier Service this morning. There is a prize here for the best question, so get your questions ready, because we'll be sending that out. And I can attest it is a very nice Pinot, so put me a box aside, please.
Okay.
All right. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Hoppy, and just to, I guess, wow, Hoppy, how far do we go back? We go back a long way. It's been a hell of a journey.
At least 25 years, Mike.
It has to be 25 years. So someone that's had a massive impact on my life, my selling game, my world. He's a bit of a legend of the selling trade. He was there in the old days of rank Xerox back in England when Rackerman started to really have an effect on the Xerox company. So there's probably not much that this bloke doesn't know about spin. Anything that he doesn't know is not worth knowing anyway. And obviously influenced my sales game. And then as I got into business, especially with Red Source Technology and that, we had some real fun with there. I think we did a cook around the world night one night with tickets and Garuda into it. It was all crazy shit, wasn't it, Hoppy? But so
I'm responsible for you getting into consulting.
Yeah, he did. He taught me the finer art of consulting early, and then I went off and had a crack on my own. So it's good to have you back, Hoppy. And I call you Hoppy, but you're known as John Hopkins. So
Hoppy will do fine.
I'll welcome you. You're going to give us a bit of an update and a bit of an insight of what you're seeing and what you think's got to work, and then we'll throw it open for Q&A.
Great. Mike is a sales scientist, and I'm partly responsible for that. For the last at least 40 years, I've been fascinated, interested in, and paid for researching what great salespeople do. About 40 years ago with Rackham, we were looking at something called needs, and we tried to define needs, both implied and explicit. And that worked quite well. Getting salespeople to understand their customers' problems and giving them solutions was a great idea. About 20, a bit more than 20 years ago, we started to get into customers' values. So yes, we understood their needs, but lots of other people did too. What differentiated the good ones was they started to try and understand the customer's value system and therefore put their solution in the customer's currency, using the customer's value system to leverage the sale. And that worked really well too. So we understood needs and we understood the value system, and that was great. In the last few years, we've been working on a further step, and that's how are we judged by our customers? I've got my best clients who are all actually doing quite well in the current environment, but they are talking to their clients about how the clients see them and see the solution and see the value that they bring. And then they're leveraging, so they're not only leveraging off the needs of the value system, but they're also leveraging on the customer's judgment. And that's probably where we're up to in terms of research into sales success. When I was a young bloke, about 120 years ago, I was fortunate enough to study philosophy. And there are, amongst many concepts, the Greeks had some interesting concepts. They had two concepts for time. One was chronos, as in your watch. The train leaves the station when the big hand hits the 12. That's events in time. Everybody understands that concept. Chronology, chronometer, and so on. There's a second Greek concept of time, and that's called kairos. And it's worth looking up if you're interested in it, Kairos. It is the management of opportunities. What the Greek philosophy says is that every day past your window, if you're looking out of it, there are 2 or 3 opportunities: an opportunity to meet somebody new, an opportunity when it's the right time to close a sale, an opportunity to find a new customer. I've had 2 or 3 opportunities in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And it's what the Greek philosophy is, what do you do with that opportunity? Not all of them turn into business. Some of them turn into be dead-end streets, but quite a lot of them, meeting a new person, finding the right time to close an order, meeting a new prospect. If you manage those opportunities well, then fortune smiles sense. So in addition to understanding needs, understanding value systems, what's the matter with my connection? Understanding needs, understanding value systems, understanding how we're judged, what I'm urging people to do today is to look at the opportunities, however obscure, and see what they can do about them. The other concept I want to put in front of you is another Greek concept called aesthesis. Many of you would understand the word aesthetics, means something of beauty or of value. It comes from the original concept of aesthesis, which is the perception of good. And it's that perception that is so critical to returned business. You want repeat business, understand how the customer, how the client looks at you in terms of how can you assist. One of the things that we understand about successful salespeople is that they are prepared to challenge. That is, they understand the customer's situation well enough, needs, value system, how they're judged, and they're capable of putting forward premise, an idea, a concept, a solution that the customer had not thought of. Our job sometimes is to challenge the customer's thinking and the customer's way of doing business to cause them to think about things in a different way. And as a consultant, that's my main purpose in life. I do strategy, I do training, but my job is, and I'm a chairman of a couple of boards and I sit on another board. My job these days is to cause people to think either broader or deeper about the way they do things and cause them to not only just think about it, but to go into action. Last of all, I want to talk about the cost of sales. Clearly the cheapest cost of sale is the existing product to existing customer. When they come back to us with no effort on our part, zero cost of sale. New product to existing customers is the next cheapest thing you can do. Where you are trusted, you are the trusted advisor, you are judged well, you understand their value system and you understand their needs. Introducing a new product, a new solution, as I talked about earlier, the challenger concept is the next cheapest cost of sale. After that, it's existing product to new customer. I was talking to a potential client only this week earlier, and he said, we have been so successful at introducing our existing product to new markets. He said, we've added 30% of sales to last year's budget. And I said, how did you do it? And he said, we thought about what our product did and who we did it for. And then we said, who's like them? Who looks like them, who behaves like them, who acts like them? Why don't we just contact them and say, hey, we've had real success in a business like yours. Would you like to have a look at my product? And they can't believe how easy it was because their new customers weren't being serviced particularly well. And when they were offered an alternative solution, they took it. A lot of the time they took it, which is really
interesting, Hoppy, because in a low trust world, a fear world, nervous, risk averse world, if you can give that very quick evidentiary guarantee that, like, here's some other guys that have done it before you,
case studies,
follow them, it's a really easy sell, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I'm driving them towards examples, case studies, and success formulas. What do other people like you do that has made them better off than you?
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. I'm more than happy to field any questions, difficult or otherwise.
So just let's have a listen to what John said, and we'll really start to unpack it. One of the things I heard there was this sort of collaborative approach to sales. I really like that. Let's work together and see if we can come up with a solution. It's co-creation, that old co-creation thing. So the opportunity, I believe really seriously, there's lots of opportunities there, but we're getting caught in the fog of COVID and the fog of depression and recession and all that crap.
Correct.
And there's so much opportunity. Like if two blokes can start with 10 grand in a $500 million business making beds, well, then there are lots of opportunities around.
That's a great example, Mike, of opportunity management.
Yeah.
Two blokes couldn't find hard to buy a bed. They found two blokes who could design beds, and the rest is history. And their advertising is so simple.
Yeah.
They advertise a lot
as a brand person.
A lot on 3AW. It's simple. It's direct. It tells the story. These guys have done something really special. You should have a look at it. And that's all that. All they want is people inquiring.
Yeah, and they nail the inquiries. It's a really strong brand. The other thing I think you said, which like this whole thing, can I assist? And being the challenger, when you talk about the challenger, and you know me well enough, I've been a prickly sort of cantankerous bloke all my life. So when advisory selling and challenge sales come up, it's like, yeah, well, this is a red rag to me. It's beautiful because that's how I've always been. But I just didn't realise it could be so powerful in selling. But you know, obviously, you've got to do it with empathy and rapport and respect. Like, I don't think I ever challenge where I don't have a good sort of relationship or some sort of understanding framework in front of it. And a lot of the time, you know, my referrers say, which I really love now, Mike's not for everyone, and that's actually what I want people to say in referral.
Yeah.
Because it's that uniqueness, that boldness, and you talked about we've got to be a bit bold in sales. Like, you probably haven't thought about this idea, but here's a really bold idea to change the world and get you out of status quo. I think that's a really good one. And then the cost of sales. Where is the value equation in sales? And I think we're really good, coming back to Eric's point of putting our solution forward. I don't think we're as good as putting the problem forward. I'd add one thing to it. I was talking to someone in New Zealand yesterday who went for a big deal. So you'll love this, Hoppy. And he went for a big deal. And I said, how'd you go? And he said, we lost. I said, fantastic. And he said, what?
What have you learned?
Because my attitude, as you know, from Sales Cats is there's no good loss. There's no bad losses. There's only good ones.
Yeah.
And I said to him, what happened? Well, we pitched. I pitched to a husband and wife, and I read right. And I went through and I asked about their story and what's going on with their current supplier and blah, blah, blah. They'd been asked to come in and pitch, so it was a hot lead. And then he said, I found the needs and what the problems were. So then I sold, you know, our services and what we did, and they were all, and I felt really good, and I come away and we lost. And I said, right, what was the bit you missed? And I said, could it be that you missed this bit? And he said, what's that? And I said, they were about to make a decision, and they did. But did you explain how, if they make a decision and change from their current supply to you, how it'll go down? So you're asking them to jump across a cliff. You didn't provide the bridge.
Yeah.
And he just sat there and he went, wow. I said, well, map it out. What if, and say to them, here is the process if you say yes. I'm not going to force you to say yes, but if you say yes, here's what will happen from the day you say yes and the steps in it. And
Can I interrupt there, Mike?
Yeah.
When I was doing my earliest piece of research, we were fascinated by people who were really good at closing the sale. And everybody tightens up and they find it difficult and they change their behavior. No, the absolute champions at completing the sale. I hate the word closing because it sounds like it's the end of something.
Yeah, and we say we should be always closing, so you're never not closing.
It's actually the opening of the start of a financial beneficial relationship. What we saw in the guys who were exceptional at concluding the business was that they put forward an action plan. They went past the decision of making the paper. They'd say, okay, the next thing we need to do is to do some paperwork, and that's all right. After that, we're going to do an investigation in how we install it. Then we're going to do some training. And then we're going to come back a month later and make sure it's all working. And the implementation scenario, the implementation plan was the thing that closed the sale, because people could actually see that. Then they could actually envisage the.
Whoa, have we lost him? Have we lost him? We might have lost him. Are you there, Hoppy? We love that NBM. We spent 46 billion on NBM, and we still can't. Are you there?
Yeah, I hope so.
See, as you said before, we're very tolerant of mistakes in selling at the moment. I think we're tolerant of Zoom access too as well. All right. Let's get some questions rolling here, because I reckon there's some I love that, the concluding of business, not closing. So we should just ban the word closing and have.
Oh, absolutely. It sounds like the end of something, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's the start of something.
And as Jason and I say, it's about chasing the no's. Don't chase the yeses. Chase the no's right through the process.
Yep.
And then so everyone on the call today should be working on what's the implementation of your sale, not just the sale. Right. You know, what is your implement? If you give me the business, here's what's going to happen. So there's no surprises. I reckon there's a lot of deals lost because of that surprise element not being covered. I reckon you're spot on.
Yeah.
All right, questions. You have to unmic yourself to ask a question. Now, if there's no questions tonight, I'm just going to go to the bar, but I think there's going to be some questions, because there should be plenty. Who's got a question?
John, you mentioned opportunities, are presented to us in so many different ways. And I love the fact that you spoke about seeing the trends that are happening with other customers and using that as a basis, as a sort of a way in with a new opportunity.
Yep.
In today's environment where we can't get in front of that customer, because we can't have appointments, we can't meet face to face. What are you seeing, I suppose, in that digital platform that's getting cut through? Because our customers are getting hit up with so much, whether it be social media or emails. How do we get that cut through where our messaging comes to the surface and it's us that they read our email over someone else's?
Great question. It isn't easy. I personally love face-to-face. I always have, but then I'm an old-fashioned sort of guy. What I've learned in the last probably 8 or 9 weeks is, one, the value of your website.
Yep.
And it has to demonstrate what's in the toolkit. And by demonstrate, nothing beats a case study, sometimes a model or a metaphor. I was talking to a new client the other day, and I had a bit of a background into what they do, because I went and had a look at what they do. I understood a bit about the market because I've worked with one other, not exactly a competitor of theirs, but somebody in the. And what I did was to send him just 2 or 3 slides, which talked about how you go about achieving what we're trying to achieve. With another client, I'm doing a not-for-profit job with homeless children, and it's really rewarding. It rewards the giver and the receiver. And their strategy is awful. Their website's awful. And yet they're doing a really good job of working with homeless children on the ground. And I said, you need to understand your purpose. And they said, what's that? So rather than try and talk them through it, I sent them 2 or 3 examples. Here's what reaches, here's what one of your much bigger compare. Here's what the Salvo's website looks like. And I said, that's not great. And then I did a little mock-up of what it could look like and sent it to them. And they went, this is the challenger, Mike. Yeah, I was being the challenger again. And they said, now we understand. That's not quite right. That language is not quite right for us. But thank you. We're now on a way of thinking. And if you can engage the customer, and it has to be electronically, I mean, what can we do? Nothing beats a case study. Nothing, especially if it resonates with them. So you need to be careful about what you choose.
Yeah. One of the things I've seen work, Hoppy, and you can try is also
great question.
Digital overlay PowerPoint. If you're doing PowerPoint proposals, put an audio, record yourself presenting the PowerPoint. If you've got a creds document, if you've got a website, like record yourself talking through your website.
Yeah, good. And it's easy these days. Cameras are cheap, microphones are cheap. One thing I urge, get a good microphone. The microphone in your computer ain't good enough.
Correct.
So, the camera in your computer might be good enough. Mine wasn't, so I bought the camera, but the microphone is critical, because what you sound like needs to resonate with the pictures you're showing. Yeah. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And I think if you're linking it back to, the messages or the trends that you're seeing in your market and what other customers are experiencing that you can share with new opportunities, and you're putting that in a format that resonates with them, especially if they're a group of customers that trust each other in the sense of, well, if you're using them and you're getting good results, And I reckon I'm going to use them as well.
Yeah, yeah.
If you can get that going.
Nothing beats a referral.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if we can show that, demonstrate that capability through, testimonials, case studies, but also talking about what we're learning from our customers at the moment, and these are probably the challenges you're experiencing as well, and this is what we've put into play here, and it's worked successfully, these are the results they received, then it's a lot easier to sell in to someone when you've got that data insight behind you.
Best word you used was demonstrate.
Yes.
No.
All right.
Thank you.
Next question. Who's got a question? Who's got a question? There's got to be a question.
I've got one, Mike.
Yep.
It's a bit of a follow-up from, I think, was it Maggie? Andrea, who's not Andrea?
Yes, Maggie.
Maggie, yeah.
Yes. Sorry.
Golden Maggie.
Yes. The blonde version.
And it's because the communication at the moment is digital, and we've obviously got into MailChimp the last few months. How do you judge if, like, getting the frequency right for contacts? It's obviously something that's a bit new to me, and the last thing I want to do is be in someone's face too much.
Yeah, good question. How much is too much?
Can I answer this topic?
Yeah, have a go.
I reckon you've got to create a rhythm and a theme in your communication.
Yep.
And for those, Andrew and Trent and that, you would be aware of our communication. We went from sort of Shackleton's lessons when it was chaos and crisis. We went then into the wonderful Morris Wilson missing maps. Thank you, Angela. And we did this amazing thing about this crazy guy that tried to fly a plane into the top of Mount Everest to climb it and save his trouble. And now we're into the weird one. So there's a theme there. The big thing was less was more. We'd write the newsletter or the communication, and then we'd strip it back down to 2 columns with a headline and a postcard at the top. Really important. We've got ripping feedback from the picture gets the person in, just like the front of the Sun Herald. And then 2 columns is easy to read because no one's got any time. And if they want to get more out of it, they click, and we see people sort of clicking through. And we're doing that. We've been doing that weekly. And we've had out of our 2,000 people on email, only 2 unsubscribes. And we're getting feedback that people are, but it's not pitching and it's not selling. No. So it's really important. We're not pitching and selling. We're just informing and
telling a story.
Yeah.
So I think frequency doesn't matter if it's the right content. You'd send it every day if it's bloody beautiful content. If you're pitching and selling though, and very outwardly, I think you'll run into trouble really quickly on unsubscribe there.
I absolutely agree, Mike. The other thing, Peter, is you and I and most of the rest of the world aren't experts in marketing language. You're a good winemaker. I'm a good consultant. I find and use people in my resource base. So I happen to have a retired advertising agent who is passionate about the English language, and he's passionate about how a document looks. He is absolutely worth his weight in gold for my clients. Some clients know that I use him, and some people think it's me. It don't matter. The fact is that whenever my client communicates with somebody, the language is precise and perfect. The look of the document is precise and perfect. And because we're now judged on the look of you put a spelling mistake in a proposal and the client will pick it up and go, these people don't care. You make a mistake in the mathematics of the pricing and they pick it up and they say, this person doesn't care. So the care and trouble with which your documents leave your premises is critical. Find good people and use them.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thanks very much for that. I guess I approached it from, I looked at what emails do I open, and it comes back to what you were saying before about having a story to tell, having a reason to open it.
Yeah, and the story's the key. That's why we've got Shackleton and Morris Wilson and, you know, the weird ones. Angela, like this is your baby, this is your world. How do people get good effect from? You've seen our newsletters, you know about ours, and you know, what's your thoughts? And if you want to bag mine, that's okay.
I can't when I help create it.
Go for it, Angela. Yes, you can.
Nice to meet you, John. I was just thinking as you were talking, something I often refer to these days is the hum, sing, shout model. Has anyone heard of that before?
No, go for it.
Hum, sing, shout. I love it.
Hum, sing, shout. So when you're thinking about your communications, what you want to have in the background is the constant hum. And that's the information that you're actually offering as an added value to your customer. That's what you communicate most frequently because you're adding the most value to them. And then when you start to sing, that's a little less frequent. So if you were looking, Mike, for example, at your weekly email that you send out, you blast, you know, you've got your blog continuing on in the background, and maybe your weekly summary newsletter links in all of that information. So that's a sing point. Your blog, your everyday blog is kind of, or your social media posting, that stuff is the hum. And then the shout becomes your sell. So your shout is something you don't like to be shouted at yourself, and people don't like to have it that frequently put in their face either. So if you were doing daily activity on socials and then weekly emails out, your shout probably should be monthly, or maybe even a good quarterly blast where you're actually doing that sort of big focus, but right. You're unashamedly selling at that point because you've been adding value to them the whole way along.
You have a right, don't you, at that stage?
You do. Yeah. You do.
That's a great word, Mike. You have a right.
Yeah. You taught me we have a right of customerhood and they have a right of supplyhood, and we've got to meet in the middle somewhere.
Absolutely.
See, I was listening, Hoppy, in those classes.
You were.
All right, I've got a question that's come up here, and it's come up fairly anonymously. What will sales look like in 20? Let's get to Christmas, get on the beers, as we'd like to say in Victoria, because we haven't been on them for a while, and we'll see Santa Claus probably via Zoom. I don't know how we'll even find him. And then after Christmas, what's sales going to look like? What's the key things for salespeople to be looking for in 2021? What's going to change? What's it going to look like?
I thought you were going to say in 20 years. 22.
No, shit. I was
going to go into future mode. But 2021, I think, do the things you do well. Look at what you've learned. The key, my very first words to you after Benjamin Franklin, adversity breeds opportunity, was the most successful businesses in the last 7 or 8 months in Victoria have learnt to adapt. Bistro Jutan, those bed makers, adapting at the speed with which you can adapt to the change situations has meant the difference between success and disappointment. What's it going to look like next year? As we start to open up, it's going to be what you have learned and brought to the table that is of value. So do we understand needs? Do we understand their value system? How are we judged? Can we challenge the way? My job next week, I've got a lovely client I've had for 3 or 4 years. Next week, I'm going to challenge them to think about what they do really well and where else could we do it. Because they've got JobKeeper, we've gone through and we've tightened up all the systems. We've got it cut out the waste. We've looked at their best customer base. We've actually recruited people because there were people being in their industry being laid off. We found a couple of real stars. Can we afford them? Have we got the salary cap? Not really. But you remember I talked about opportunity management, Kiaros? these guys were an opportunity, and I said we need to grab them and get them to regenerate the whole of our systems in our business. We got JobKeeper to pay for that. Now we're starting to churn over some work again. What's it going to look like next year? It's not going to be more of 2019, and it's not going to be more of 2020 either. It's going to be where I've got a reduced workforce. I've got a tighter market. How do I leverage the value that I have learned in the last 2 years? Where am I really good? Where are my best clients? Where are the clients who look like my best clients? And what's my genuine value offer? What's my genuine value proposition? And then go for it like mad, because if you are faster out of the blocks than your competitors with a good value proposition, you'll do okay.
And Hoppy, isn't it, to me, and Angela and I were talking about this sort of a couple of weeks ago, we live in a fast-paced world where everything wants everything in an instant, and everyone should get everything, and we expect to have 100,000 at the Melbourne Cup. We're not going to, we have these expectations that have been really, I think, badly created. But I look back and go, now's the time for the real salespeople to stand up. Now's Absolutely. The time to do some real work. Now's the time to do some good research and reconnaissance. Now's the time to be bold. Now's the time to be the best question maker you can be. Yep. Now's the time to be the best listener in a fast-paced world you can be. Like you've got to take listening to a new level now. You've got to take questions. So everything, it's like you're doubling down on all your bets.
Yeah.
If you don't have that as a base as a salesperson, you're going to really struggle with that. You'll fall into order taking, and order takers are really in trouble now. Like they were in trouble when we wrote the white paper a couple of years ago, but they're really in trouble now.
Order takers have been in trouble for a couple of years, but particularly in the last 8 or 9, all over Australia. The value bringers have done well.
And I think one of the key words you use there, John, is what have you learnt this period? And I think for those salespeople that haven't taken this opportunity while it's been quiet to actually learn new skills, better questioning techniques, how they're going to add value, how their customers have changed, what's happening in their world, in the market, I think that's going to be the struggle for 2021, is they haven't used this opportunity to learn themselves as much as they need to learn about their customers. I think. Remember,
I talked about opportunity management.
Yeah, exactly.
This environment has been an opportunity to have a look at your systems, your processes, your product, your people, your customers. If you haven't done that in the last 6 months, you've just wasted 6 months. Mike knows I have a son in London with a business with about 100 people. Boris Johnson closed down the whole business, but he offered to pay them 80% of their salaries. So James sent them all home on 80% salary. Then they started to open up again. And I said to James, what are you doing? What are you doing in lockdown? He said, Dad, we're going to go through every one of our systems from point of sale to delivery to getting the money. He said, we're going to tighten everything up. And they've invested in new systems. I said, what about your people? He said, I've got 105 people. I said, well, here's a model to look at your dead wood. He said, I haven't got much dead wood, Dad. And I said, well, I bet you've got some. He said we let 6 people out of 100 go. We kept 99 of them because when we come back to work, they're all valuable. Mm. And the matrix I gave him was on one side of your matrix, you've got commitment to the company's culture. The other is the degree to which they're productive in terms of making profit over the cost of employment. He said, whoa. I said, have you got anybody that's not committed to the culture? He said, well, I've got a few, but they're productive. I said, have you got anybody that's not very productive? He said, I've got a few, but they're committed. they only found 5 or 6 people that lacked the commitment and the productivity, so they let them go.
Yeah.
They kept the rest of them. Then when they came back to work, he called them all in and said, right, we're back to work now. Anybody not want to be here? And they all said, oh, no, we all want to be here. So they went through the people, the systems, the product, their suppliers. He negotiated price decreases with most of his suppliers, his rental. He went through the whole business with a fine-tooth comb, cut out all waste, expanded the good ideas, found new ideas. The business is in terrific shape to start again.
And that's where you've got to be. That's the surfboard analogy. You've got to come out with your surfboard intact. One last question. We've probably got a couple of minutes before we've sort of got to get properly on the beers.
Great question, Maggie.
Thank
Good
you.
question. Who's got a question to finish with? Finish us off with a big question. Trent, you've always got questions, mate.
I've always got questions. Yeah, I've got one of my sales team members on the call actually. Shout out to Claire.
Hi, Claire.
I guess a question now. Teams asking at the moment, and Claire's located in Victoria. You know, we've been a very face-to-face sales model for the sales team on road. Obviously, they're now having to pivot to, or have done most of the year, on digital video conference like this. You know, having pushed back on getting on video from a customer base. The customer base is very busy, as I guess we all are. But you know, how do we give them value to give us that time? We can send them digital, we can send them email, we're doing all that, socials, working with Angela now on increasing the hell out of that. But how do we convince them that our time is important or valuable to them to give us that time face to face digitally?
It's a really tough question. I've had a couple of organizations I've worked with that have done sales calls after 5 o'clock. Mm-hmm. So the customer's busy all day, either doing what they do or stocking or talking. But like now, it's 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Can they find 15 minutes to just spend some time with you thinking about, and that's when you need to have a really good reason for them to talk to you.
A good PPP, Hoppy.
Exactly. If the PPP ain't good enough.
2 things I've learned from you.
You are a champion. We came up with that, 30 years ago.
Yeah, and I still use it.
Still works. Still works.
Still works, of course. If you've not got a good reason to talk to them, why would they talk to you? Yeah. You need to have not an unbelievably good, but you need to have a really good. The advertisers call it slugline. I hate that. You need to have a really good tagline to cause them to want to talk to you.
Right.
We solve this, or we add that, or we save this, or whatever your potential benefits are, there has to be one of them. And I think Angela was talking about it, earlier. You need to have one. You don't need 5 good reasons. You just need 1, or at best 2.
And in my experience, one of the things I've used, Trent, is, and it's back to this boldness and this also a bit of disturbance. I've got an idea. I've got an idea that I think can change your business. Now, I know at the moment that's going to be pretty crazy sort of suggestion. However, I know this idea has worked in other places like you.
Bingo.
Would you like to hear my idea? And if now's not the right time, is there a time that I can float this idea that'll increase profitability, blah, blah, blah? Are you interested in that idea? For me, float an idea. Don't float a solution. Come back to Eric's point. Float an idea to a problem acutely they've got. And that, for me, that's like classic PPP, purpose, process, payoff.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Is that helpful?
Very helpful. I've got a couple of, just to sort of wrap us up, a couple of one-liners there. The world 2021 will be full of value bringers, not order takers. Thank you. It might be the title of our new book, Welcome the Value Bringers. Look out. Angela Eichler, absolute stunner. Hum, sing, shout. Bring it
I
on.
love it.
Right, you are the brand conspirator, and that is so much conspiracy. I love it. All right, implementation of the sale. I'm going to take credit for that one because that was my story. So we all do sales calls, we all do proposals, and we're all prepared for that. We've got contracts, and we're prepared for that. But has anyone prepared a implementation strategy out of conducting business? If we conclude this business today, not close, if we conclude it, what will happen next? Don't leave customers guessing, is my advice there. Don't let them jump over a cliff with you, because it's not going to happen at the moment. They're very risk averse. There's some gold here and shit, you know. I'm committed to Q&A, and we're going to keep doing it because we keep getting gold out of people like Hoppy. So big round of applause for Hoppy.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. And the great, I tell you what, Mike, in conclusion, the quality of the questions marks out the people.
Yeah.
It does it in sales, and it's done it today. The quality of the questions, you know, if you get well, how do I do this? You think, oh, okay. But when we ask really good quality questions, we cause the people around us, not just our customers, but our own staff, our own friends, we cause them to think. When we are causing people to think, we're doing our job.
Correct. So thank you very much, Hoppy. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Don't forget, we've got Director's Circle for members coming up in November. Also, Sales Growth Club will be kicking off. So make sure you sort of get in touch with Maggie about Sales Growth Club.
Yep.
For those of you, we're going again. We're going to do it again in November. Even if no one I don't care. Even only 2 of us turn up, I'll be okay. We'll keep going. I want to thank Peter Roach. Well done, mate. Thank you for your wine and the Bended Knee. Get on their website, bendedknee.com, and order your bloody minds out, because it's fantastic stuff, and he can roll it down the hill to me and I can deliver it to you. So,
Already done that.
I love God, mate.
I saw that, Sally. I'll drop it into you next week. So thanks, everyone. Take care. Be safe and sell well. Thanks, Hoppy. Well done.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.